She didn't answer. Well, Theresa May is certainly answering ISIS-Daesh today. British troops have been in action in the ancient city of Mosul, settled 8,000 years ago. But what is the strategy lying behind the British, Iranian, American, Hezbollah-backed Iraqi government attack on the former capital of the Assyrian Empire? Some people believe that NATO powers, by their prior warnings, have been conspiring to move ISIS-Daesh out of Iraq into Syria to fight the forces of President Bashar al-Assad. To get one perspective is the deputy head of Baghdad Council Security Committee, Saad al-Matlabi. He's an Iraqi state of law coalition member of parliament, and he joins me from Baghdad. Saad, thanks so much for joining us again. What is the scale of the humanitarian catastrophe in Mosul before and since the NATO-backed Iraqi government operation?
As a matter of fact, until now, there isn't really any serious humanitarian issue, since the battle is still raging on the outskirts of Mosul, which is some 7 to 10 kilometers, 7 miles or 10 kilometers away from the center of Mosul. Until this moment, we don't really have any problem with any humanitarian issues. A number of camps have been set by the United Nations, by the Iraqi government, and by the Kurds also. So the environment is ready to receive some 100,000 civilians, but until this moment there hasn't been any problems in this regards.
On the one hand, we hear from mainstream media, many of the same reporters who have reported, it has to be said incorrectly, from other conflicts, saying things are going well. And on the other hand, NGOs and charities saying, yes, there are tents for so many tens of thousands, but 1.3 million people face humanitarian catastrophe. Who's right?
Well, I mean, NGOs are usually need to paint a bleak picture, because that's how they get their fundings. There are problems, but not in Mosul. The people who left Mosul was about 1 million that was dispersed in 2014 among the Iraqi cities, and they are not in camps. They are mainly within built-up areas, and they are living completely an ordinary life. The problem we're anticipating for the future, the 1.5 million within Mosul that may have to leave their homes if the war continues. The way the army is trying to achieve this, as the last 2 cities that we took from ISIS, and we left the people within the city, and they were vetted immediately after the liberation, and they stayed home.
Did many ISIS-Daesh fighters flee the Mosul area before the Iraqi army went in because of all the warnings by the Obama administration days before the move?
We do believe that the main leaders and the actual lieutenants of al-Baghdadi have already left Mosul from intelligence reports, and they even we have reports that they have been heading into Turkey, not even al-Raqqa. So yes, this way out for ISIS, for the leaders, have been set, and we think some of their lieutenants have been already used that opportunity to flee Mosul and flee Syria altogether. And some people saying that they're heading to Libya, or, we're still not sure about that.
I want to get onto that in more detail in a second. On the perhaps good side is one way of putting it. What is it like for your army to be fighting alongside the British Army and troops from, say, groups like Hezbollah, Nujaba, and others? Happy, cozy, all-allied fight together, and of course with the Americans?
Well, until now, the operation has been very clean. We have a minimum of casualty. The number is happily, surprisingly very low. So the coordination between all the fighting forces has been great. And the coordination even with the allies and the Americans, the Brits, the others, until today has been very good and very effective and very precise. The Americans, as you may understand or know, that they are using spotters, and they are painting the targets with lasers, so the strikes are very precise and very good and effective, and providing great assistance to the Iraqi forces.
Because the Hezbollah fighters obviously fighting with the British Army there, their allied Hezbollah fighters in Syria are fighting ISIS-Daesh in Aleppo. What do you think about the fears that the whole operation, as some people have said, notably the Hezbollah leader, that this is about getting ISIS-Daesh into Aleppo as fast as possible to fight the Syrian government and its allies.
What's happening in, I think in Aleppo, it's a mess made by the Americans who are protecting the insurgents and the those who are connected to Al-Qaeda, like al-Nusra and even ISIS, Daesh in Aleppo, where everybody is trying to remove these elements from Aleppo or to fight them. But we can all see that the Americans are using Aleppo as an excuse to protect ISIS and the insurgents that are the illegal insurgents, of course, who are fighting against the illegal Syrian government.
Do you think, I mean, the Russians have declared a ceasefire in Aleppo, but do you think that there was that speeding up of operations in Aleppo for fear of the fallout from Mosul? It's actually the Mosul operation that has dictated events in Aleppo.
The ceasefire was broken by the insurgents when they attacked the Russian monitors. So we can't really, I mean, it's very difficult to have an honest ceasefire with the insurgents in Syria. The major danger really is for ISIS to move away from Mosul and divide its forces. Leaders go to Aleppo and the others go to Al-Raqqa, and then really we haven't achieved anything in the overall picture. We need to destroy ISIS in Iraq and in Syria, regardless in which city, allowing them this freedom of movement from Iraq into Syria, into Aleppo, into Al-Raqqa or other destinations definitely will prolong the suffering of the Syrian people.
But of course your government invited British troops and American troops to take part in this operation. President Assad has not invited US and British troops into Syria. What did you make of the US commander in the region, Lieutenant General Townsend, saying NATO forces will move on from Mosul to Raqqa after this one, if necessary, to chase ISIS-Daesh? What's he talking about?
I think it's a preset plan where I think the Americans are still in need for ISIS as a tool, as a political tool to exert more pressure on the Syrian regime. And I think the story hasn't ended for ISIS in the view of the Americans. They can still use this terrorist element as a scarecrow or as a pressure point to exert it on any nation in this area. These comments are very dangerous. Instead of commenting such things, they should help us in providing a full aerial support over the border and strike at any convoy that's trying to move from Iraq, ISIS convoys, of course, from Iraq into Syria. Just commenting that these forces will move from Mosul into Raqqa, that's not helpful at all.
Iraq and your ally Iran, they didn't send ministers to the recent World Energy Congress meeting. Does that mean that when it comes to the economies of both Iran, Iraq, many other economies around the world, there's no prospect immediately of freeze on output?
The problem that Iraq and Iran are producing oil below their quotas. We do have a problem with producing countries outside ISIS convoys, of course, from Iraq into Syria. Just commenting that these forces will move from Mosul into Raqqa, that's not helpful at all.
Iraq and your ally Iran, they didn't send ministers to the recent World Energy Congress meeting. Does that mean that when it comes to the economies of both Iran, Iraq, many other economies around the world, there's no prospect immediately of freeze on output?
The problem that Iraq and Iran are producing oil below their quotas. We do have a problem with producing countries outside OPEC, and within OPEC we have a real problem with Saudi Arabia, that are producing far above their quota and disturbing the world market, oil world market, and disturbing the prices. The Saudis are paying very heavy price for this within their population, but for political means and political ends, they are ready to risk great problems internally, but they want to achieve their world downfall of prices, because it will eventually, or they think it will eventually help their political cause, according to the Americans and the Saudis, where they can bring pressure on Iran and Russia.
And I've got to say, Iraq looks pretty, Baghdad looks pretty beautiful behind you. Just very briefly, give something as a hint of the history of Mosul. British troops march on it. I mean, a cradle of civilization, 8,000 years old.
The great scenes of the city of Ashur and Mosul in the British Museum on the ground floor. And that is a very historic, very old city, and a beautiful city, and also with a total variety of cultures, the Muslims, the Christians, and the Christians, of course, it's a very a major seat for Christianity in Iraq, city of Mosul, with beautiful churches and cathedrals. Unfortunately, half of them were destroyed by ISIS, but hopefully they will be rebuilt again to the old grandeur they had.
And Baghdad is safe, because of course European cities constantly appear to be on alert from this attack or that attack, rumored to be ISIS-Daesh.
Baghdad is safe. Baghdad is a very large city, and incident does happen all over the world, and the international community suffer more casualties in road accidents than we have terrorist attacks here in Baghdad. Baghdad is a beautiful city with a beautiful river runs in it, and people welcomes all the visitors, hopefully, in the near future.
Saad Al-Matlabi, thank you. Well, that's it from one of your favorite episodes of the year. We'll be back with more from this season's top picks on Wednesday, and we'll start a brand new season of Going Underground on Saturday, the 14th of January. In the meantime, get in touch via social media. We'll see you soon.